I thought I had lost everything. And so I set up camp in a crowded land called Victimville. Perhaps you've heard of it. And I wasn't just visiting. I had completely unpacked and planned to stay a while. I lived beside the broken, the mistreated, the depressed. Now, before you go running for the nearest exits, we blocked the doors, so you might as well get comfortable here. And ask yourself if you've ever experienced something similar. Perhaps you're facing something right now, and that's okay. Oftentimes we get stuck in those places of despair because we as humans seek to connect with someone who has gone through our same kind of suffering. After about a decade in Victimville, my neighbors were really starting to bum me out. And I was no ray of sunshine either. And so I started to seek out life-giving people and experiences. I drew inspiration from stories of overcomers from yesterday and today. Like Olympic torchbearers, these individuals had run ahead, and they had provided a path of hope and light for us all to follow. One man stood above the rest. He had left a detailed game plan for how to triumph over adversity. For a time, I had rejected his plan, but eventually embracing his lasting legacy would enable me to discover my own. Sports was in my hero's DNA. Teams and players, practices and games, wins and losses. At the age of 13, he participated in his very first organized team sport, and he knew, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I want to be a basketball coach. While attending a summer camp one year, he heard the words that forever changed him. There was a motivational speaker by the name of Reverend Bob Richards, and he ignited a flame of passion inside this young man that changed him. Richards uttered, "God must have loved ordinary people because he made so many of us. And yet every day in every walk of life, ordinary people accomplish the extraordinary." At the age of 17, he took out a plain index card, and he wrote down everything he wanted to accomplish in his professional career. He wanted to play basketball in high school, go on to play basketball in college. He wanted to become an assistant coach, a head basketball coach. He wanted to win a big game in Madison Square Garden, being from New York. And then finally, he wanted to cut down the nets after winning a national championship. This ordinary young man would grow up to become my father, Jim Valvano. And he would indeed live an extraordinary existence. At the age of 34, the year was 1980. I don't know if you remember that time. Well, my dad could take out his index card and he could check off every single one of those bold, audacious visions. Been there, done that, except for winning the elusive national championship. And so he enthusiastically accepted the head men's basketball coaching position at North Carolina State University. Now, I was shocked when my dad told our family that we were moving to a place called Cary, North Carolina. Never heard of it. Everybody I knew and was related to lived in New York. I was led to believe it was illegal to leave the state. Well, upon our arrival to the South, immediately it became apparent that my dad was going to garner attention wherever he went. At his very first press conference, he proved, I not only can talk X's and O's, but he also was a born entertainer, and he could leave a crowd roaring with laughter. I have to tell you, I got to be truthful here. I had never heard of the religion known as ACC basketball. I was completely unprepared. I didn't know about the historic rivalries in this area at all. What is a Tar Heel? a wolf pack, a blue devil, completely clueless. And then I would go to these things called basketball games, kind of like friendly competitions that you guys have here, and I was horrified. There, oh my goodness, grown men and women standing up, faces red with perspiration and emotion, veins bulging in their neck, and they would be hurling insults and obscenities at my dad and his players. And I guess this was normal behavior because nobody was shocked. I was. To them, he was Coach V, and that was their team. But to me, he was my dad. I never could understand or participate in the intensity of athletics that engulfed my family for so many years until that magical, unforgettable moment when it all seemed to make sense. I was in the arena in Albuquerque, New Mexico on April 4th, 1983, when with 2 seconds left on the clock, Lorenzo Charles dunked the basketball and NC State became the #1 team in the country. Do you remember this? My dad lost his mind. And he ran around looking for somebody to hug, anybody. We got some fans. And then that image of him cutting down the nets and waving it victoriously over his head, it would come to symbolize to so many that anything is possible. And with the sound of a leather ball going through an iron hoop, my dad could take out his note card and check off that final, bold, audacious vision. 10 years after winning the national championship, a stranger in a white lab coat informed my Superman that he had met his kryptonite. Adenocarcinoma would be his toughest opponent. My dad, at the age of 46, was diagnosed with terminal cancer and given 1 year to live. Almost immediately, he took out another index card, and he wrote down one final, bold, audacious vision: find a cure for cancer. Now, I knew our time was limited, and so I left college, NC State, and I moved home, and I attended medical appointments with my dad, and I traveled all around the country to basketball games as he worked as a sports commentator. Part of me just wanted to go home and deal with this in private, surrounded by loving friends and family. But my dad felt compelled to share this painful journey with the public. I was seated next to him at the inaugural ESPYs, kind of the Academy Awards of sports, if you will, when he received the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. Without any preparation or note cards or a teleprompter, he took the stage and he gave the speech he was born to deliver.
I need your help. We need money for research. It may not save my life. It may save my children's lives. It may save someone you love. We are starting the Jimmy V Foundation for Cancer Research. And its motto is, don't give up, don't ever give up.
A short time after that, my dad would pass away. On April 28th, 1993. I thought that was going to be the worst thing that ever happened in my life. But I was wrong. 33 years into the future, I was sitting in bed one night, and at the age of 33, 13 years into the future, I discovered a lump in my right breast. After a multitude of tests, another stranger in a white lab coat informed me that I not only had breast cancer, but I had inherited a genetic mutation, the BRCA2 gene, which made me more susceptible to many forms of the disease. My dad had unknowingly carried this gene and passed it on to his daughter. My doctors were hopeful, but I wasn't. As news of my diagnosis spread throughout our close-knit community, well-intended and loving people would come up to me and they would scream, "Don't give up, don't ever give up." And I would want to punch them in the face. You see, they had me confused with my dad, but I'm not a fighter. I lost my hair, my womanly figure. I lost my health, my ability to be a wife and mother. And finally came the moment I never saw coming, the moment I gave up. Sitting in the kitchen holding my bald head in my hands, I mentally decided to throw in the towel. I was done. And it was as if my dad was sitting at the table next to me. He whispered in my ear, "We're starting the V Foundation for Cancer Research. It may not save my life. It may save my children's lives. It may save someone you love." I had heard those words a million times. I could recite that speech to you, but I had never absorbed the full meaning. Instantly, those prophetic words changed everything as I realized I was the someone my dad loved. He'd been talking about me. I had watched my dad the last 10 months of his life pack every day with an overabundance of love and passion and humor. My doctors were telling me I could survive, and yet I was willing to give up because the battle was just too difficult. My sisters and my mom and my family and close friends watched as I gave in to the despair. My sweet, sweet 5-year-old son, in an effort to lift my spirits, drew me a picture. And as he presented it to me with the help of my other sister, he wrote on the bottom, "Happy, love, Mom." And I didn't know how to look in his precious little face and tell him that she was long gone. And I didn't know if we were going to be able to get her back. You see, where once a vibrant young woman had stood, now I looked in the mirror and all I saw was hollow eyes void of any emotion. And so I took that picture, I took Happy Love Mom, and I taped her to the mirror where my face would have been. And I looked at her every single day. Well, a thought popped into my head one day. What if I adopted my dad's game plan and I discovered my extraordinary life? Well, that thought sent me searching for an index card. I couldn't copy my dad and put anything about sports because I can't dribble a basketball and walk at the same time. It's a big disappointment to the family. So I had to dig deeper, and I realized that my greatest fear was leaving my children motherless. And so with shaking hands, I wrote down on that note card that I was going to survive 13 years and see my son graduate from high school. I folded that note card. I took hold of my dad's imaginary hand, and I decided together we were going to rewrite my story. My ending was going to be different. On June 2nd, 2018, I was invited to speak to my son's graduating class and their families. I was so overcome with emotion, I blacked out. I don't even know what I said. It was probably a complete disaster. But you see, this was my cutting down the nets moment. This was what I had been dreaming about. I finally knew what my dad felt like in 1983, and I wanted to leap from the stage and jump on the back of some people in the audience and high five. I knew that was inappropriate. So I just stood there, and I breathed in the miracle. My dad had more of an impact on just his daughter. He left a lasting, extraordinary legacy. And not for anything that he did on the hardwoods or any titles that he won or awards, but because of how he lived every single moment. From an early age, he was able to identify his bold, audacious visions that would breathe life into his existence. He used his talents and his gifts to inspire other people, and he refused to allow the ever-changing circumstances of this world to change his divine path. Quite simply, he never gave up. We're all just ordinary people, and yet everyone has the same opportunity to create extraordinary, lasting legacies. As I now walk in my dad's footsteps, I leave a path for other people to follow, and so do you. We might never know the depth and the scope of the legacies that we leave behind, but I want to ask you a few questions today to get you thinking about how you're living today. Have you identified your bold, audacious, cutting down the nets moments? Can you close your eyes and see those victories? Are you living in Victimville or another place of despair? Surround yourself with overcomers that push you along your divine path. And finally, are you a torchbearer lighting the way for others to follow? It's not too late to ignite your flame. I stand before you today as a 14-year cancer survivor, and indeed, a happy, love mom. I'm alive because I accepted the invitation to walk in another man's footsteps, to follow his legacy. I will be forever grateful for the path that he created. And I can proudly stand before you without any hesitation for the first time in my life and publicly say, I am my father's daughter. And it's my turn to pick up the torch and walk forward to create my own lasting, extraordinary legacy. Will you come with me? Thank you.